Welcome to the 2021 Myers Lecture Series interview with Dr. John Whitener. I'm Dr. Jeff Myers. My wife Joyce and I sponsor the Myers Lecture Series at The Ohio State University College of Optometry, now honoring our 13th lecturer. Dr. Whitener, it is a privilege to have you with us and to honor you as part of the Myers Lecture Series. We are all participating virtually this year. For our participants, know that you can ask questions during the lecture through the chat feature in the Zoom webinar. We'll monitor those questions and ask them after the interview, and then we'll plan to accept live questions as time permits. So Dr. Whitener, I'm going to kind of give some highlights of your life and kind of a this is your life type of deal, and then we'll start with some questions. So first of all, we know that you graduated from the Illinois College of Optometry with an OD and a Master's of Public Health from the University of North Carolina. We know that you've held a commission in the United States Army and the Army Reserve for a total of 23 years, serving both in Vietnam and in Operation Desert Storm, retiring at the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in 2005. And you were one of the first group of optometrists sent to Vietnam in 1966, establishing an optometry clinic at the base camp of the 101st Airborne Division. We know that you served as the Associate Director for Public Health of the American Optometric Association for 31 years, including the implementation of the Healthy Eyes, Healthy People initiative. You're the founding Chief of Staff of the National Commission on Vision and Health. You're very influential in obtaining a number of memorandums of understanding among national organizations, all for the benefit of vision care. You did numerous volunteer activities for the American Public Health Association. You're the author of numerous articles in various textbook chapters, including co-editor of the online textbook, Optometric Care Within the Public Health Community. And you also have written a memoir called Don't Ask and I Will Tell, Finding Myself in Vietnam, that you published in 2017, or that was published in 2017. Now, a career like that would not go without some recognition, as we would expect, and some of those recognitions include the American Optometric Association Low Vision Section Award, the American Optometric Association's journal Optometry Editor's Commendation Award, your Distinguished Practitioner and Fellow of the National Academies of Practice. The Illinois College of Optometry honored you with their Presidential Medal of Honor, as well as an honorary Doctor of Science. The New England College of Optometry also honored with an honorary Doctor of Science. The American Academy of Optometry presented the Carroll C. Koch Memorial Medal for interdisciplinary efforts, and the American Public Health Association's Vision Care section has presented you with their Distinguished Service Award. Obviously, a very impressive series of achievements, but the reality is we want to know a little bit more about John Whitener, and we want to know some of the backstory behind how you came to be such an achiever in your career and in your life. So, some questions for you. So first, why optometry? What drew you to the profession? And what was the motivation for pursuing a master's in public health mid-career?
Yes, well, thank you for this honor. I appreciate, from the bottom of my heart, a very unexpected surprise at this point in my life. Why optometry? So in my junior year in high school, I started thinking about a profession, and the only optometrist I knew was in my small town was the doctor that my aunt worked for as a receptionist, and he was a very charismatic person. I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be an optometrist. I mean, the idea of helping people see had to be such a gratifying feeling for a profession. And so he was the motivation behind me choosing optometry. And there was a two-part question about why I chose in mid-career to go back and get a master's in public health. So seeing patients, as most of you know, all of you know, at the end of the day, you're tired, you know what you've done, you feel mostly good about what you've done. if not always, most of the time. And, and that did bring some satisfaction to me, but I also wanted to be a part of something bigger. Public health, as I got to learn more about it, as I was wrapping up my phase in the active duty military and started looking at what I was going to do next, is when I started thinking about what could I do besides just practice optometry. And I was very interested in politics and then public health, was just became an area of interest in me. And that's, I wanted to be a part of health policy. I wanted to go to Washington and change health policy for the United States in my naive thinking.
That's a fairly noble goal.
Yes, a fairly naive goal. But yes, I wanted to be a part of something bigger than just seeing patients every day. Although that's a noble calling, but I wanted something else.
Well, but it takes people like yourself that have made the decision inside themselves. They want to make a change, and they see things that can be changed to be within the profession, to move the profession forward. So I think it's a great thing. So that's awesome. So if it wasn't for optometry, what do you think your profession would have been?
Oh my gosh. Well, I've always enjoyed writing. In the 4th grade, I remember we had to make X number of book reports, or maybe there was a reward for the one who made the most. And I actually wrote a novel, a little novella about my grandpa's horse, and made a book report on it. And I lied. I hope Mrs. Klein is not around today to call me out on this, but I made a report on it. So anyway, I like to write at an early age. I never saw myself making a living as a writer, but so I don't really know. I never pursued another field seriously other than optometry, as I said, starting in my junior year in high school when you started thinking about a career.
Kind of interesting that you wrote a book and then did the report on it. That seems to be, there seems to be some inherent bias, perhaps.
It was a very good report, as I recall.
I'm sure it was perfect. Yes, the author should write his best report. So what kinds of things motivate you?
I look. I'm still passionate about issues of social injustice. As I watch the news, or as I look at my own community, and as I did, throughout my life, that's why I got involved in political issues as an activist back in the 70s, in terms of gay rights and later on AIDS issues. So passion, yes, a passion for trying to do something about things that are wrong, realizing that I can't solve all the problems in the world, but asking myself, what can I do? And trying to make a difference. And as I've gotten older, I have less energy for actual, some of those activities, such as demonstrations or seeing my congressman or so forth. But I try to make contributions to organizations that I think are making a difference, or trying to make a difference about social inequalities and health disparities.
So that same activism attitude, probably, it sounds like that's consistent with what you were doing on a political standpoint within optometry, trying to change some things to make it a more balanced playing field for the profession.
You're right. Yeah, that's true. And I have many weaknesses, but one of my strengths is that when I identify an area that I think is wrong, that I feel like we can do something about, and this was true in optometry and when I worked at AOA, I really hang on to it, and I give it everything I can, and persevere. That, sometimes to my detriment maybe, but personally, but I do try to to persevere, because there are things, especially in health policy, that cannot change overnight. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit in the lecture about in relation to health, national health care legislation. I mean, it takes years and years and years to change some health policy, and some of the injustice that optometry as a profession has encountered from ophthalmology over the years. I certainly wanted to be a part of trying to help change that through talking with people and other actions to try to make a change.
Well, I think you have over the course of your career. I think there's no doubt that that's been the case. So tell us a little bit about some of the early influencers or mentors in your life, not only within the career, within your profession and career, but outside of the profession and your career.
Mm-hmm. I would say outside my professional career, my high school teacher, Mrs. Reitzel, who was my Latin teacher. I was not a good Latin student. She was also my English teacher. I grew up in the country, 10 miles out of town, in this small high school, and she opened up a different world that was out there for me. And I'm very grateful for her, for all she did for me personally. I can recall even, before, none of us knew how to dance. This is before, well, this was the 50s. So none of us knew any ballroom dancing, and the junior senior banquet was coming up, and she gave us dancing lessons during lunch break. Sounds like a small thing, but she also took us to Charlotte, the big city of Charlotte, to a museum that had a staging of Medea for our Latin club. So, she opened up windows to the outside world that I wanted more of. So I'm very grateful to her. Professionally, I already mentioned the Dr. Bost in Hickory, who influenced me to go into optometry, but there have been so many people within the profession. I think Dr. Norm Hafner certainly had an effect on my career early on, as well as Dr. Les Kaplan. And I'm very grateful, and there are many others, but those are two that come to mind.
Certainly two giants in the profession, that's for sure. So, yeah, good. So it seems like you had the opportunity to bring optometry into the awareness of various other groups as a public health advocate. What would you point to as your most lasting or significant contribution thus far?
Oh,
I
gosh.
don't think your life's over yet. I think you got more to
give. Yeah, but the most. It was accumulation of events during my professional career, I really think. And all of them unique to the situation, to the issues at hand. I guess the last thing in my professional career was the National Commission on Vision and Health that Dr. Baresi and I, along with some others, started this. And Dr. Ed Marshall, last year's recipient, in fact, was the chair of that commission. We brought together, it was accumulation of what my career was about. We brought together all these multidisciplinary practice people from medicine and from nursing and educators and policy people, and we brought them together to work on some vision policy issues around access to child health care and community health centers was a big focus of this commission. So that was a very rewarding way to close up my career.
And a worthwhile one, I think, without a doubt. So, tell me, I purchased your memoir, and I've read a little bit at the front, and then I skip to the back for some stuff for the interview here.
Okay.
So I'll get to it and finish it up, but I really like the way that it's written and everything. But tell us a little bit about the process and the decision to write the memoir, first of all. And I would note that it's only 1 year of your life. And so might we expect more of your memories in the book?
Oh, gosh. 1 year. But, you know, as you get into the book, you'll see that although it's based on a journal from 1 year in Vietnam, I do go back and come back to the present day and comment on issues of the day, whether it's immigration or, you know, various political issues. So it is 1 year. And it took me years, of course, to do this. And I'm not sure there's another, I'm not sure I have the energy for another one, but thank you for that compliment. It was a good process. Why did I do it? I have 9 nieces and adult nieces and nephews, and we don't get together as much as we used to when my parents were living. And even when we do, they don't ask any personal questions. They don't ask me about anything. So I wanted to start a conversation with these adult nieces and nephews, and I thought the book would be a good way to do that. And in fact, it was, especially with my nieces. It was a wonderful response, and has continued since that time. So that was the motivating factor. And at first I thought I would just write something that only my nieces and nephews and my family wanted to know about. And as I got into it, and with my first editor, she convinced me there would be a wider audience for this perhaps. And so I continued probing a lot of issues, including my faith, my being a gay person, my love-hate relationship with the military, and other issues.
And I think it's a wonderful thing that the rest of us kind of get a glimpse into what was intended to be something for your family.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of us get a glimpse of this and get to learn a little bit more about what was going on at that period of time in history, or what was going on at that moment in time in Vietnam, as well as some of those internal battles that you were kind of dealing with and everything. And I think it's gracious of you to share that, and shows a sense of vulnerability to say, here are some of the challenges I dealt with, here are some of the problems I dealt with, and here's what I did, you know. And so I'm grateful that it's available to us, and I look forward to reading the remainder of it. So
well, thank you. That's very kind of you.
So I know that you left the military in 1973, because I read that part of the book a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was pretty clear. It seemed to me that was pretty much a done deal kind of thing. I'm done. We're done. But yet we returned to the Army Reserve at a future date.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how that happened and why.
Sure. Yeah, it was a combination of things. I was at a family gathering, and my cousin, who had been in the military at the same time I was in Vietnam, continued in the Army Reserve when he came back. And he said to me, you were in 8 years, why don't you stay in for at least a 20-year retirement? And I've always been a pragmatic person, especially about retirement. And so I thought, okay. And, also at that point, I was working for AOA in Washington, seeing no patients. And I missed that touch of having patients, missed that part of my life. So joining an Army hospital unit there in the area meant I got to see patients 2 days a week. The weekend of training was at the hospital, Walter Reed Army Hospital. So I got to see patients 2 days a month and keep up my clinical skills. So, it was, and at this point in time, I had come to terms with my being gay, and I could not discuss this, of course, with any of my colleagues, because it was still, it still could have gotten me discharged dishonorably, and or pursued for other punishment criminally. So it was a risk, but I thought I could compartmentalize my life in such a way that I could do that and I could see patients. And I did that for 15 years.
Well, and it probably it probably enhanced your ability to do the public health policy stuff for AOA because you were still seeing patients part-time,
Yes.
So that would be a great benefit. Plus the benefit of the second retirement, that's not a bad deal either. So
Right. Yeah.
that's good. Tell us a little bit about your family. Now you mentioned the nieces and nephews a little bit, but tell us a little bit about your entire family.
Sure. Well, I'm the oldest. I have 3 siblings. And my parents were very hardworking people. Both of them worked in the hosiery mill. The two industries growing up in the Piedmont area of North Carolina were hosiery mills. There seems like there was one on every corner that did some part of the finishing to finish the socks from beginning to end, or furniture factories. And just to jump ahead, I'll come back. But as you know, all furniture, very little furniture is made in the United States today, and certainly not in Hickory. And you cannot find a pair of men's socks made in North Carolina. I tried very hard to do this a couple years ago, using some of my relatives who knew people. No, can't find them. So, but anyway, that was the industry. They worked hard for minimum wage, no union, no benefits, no retirement, no health insurance. And they instilled in us all a wonderful work ethic. And along with that, my religious upbringing. And I blend the two in this answer because, as I'm thinking about it, because there was scripture, work to show yourself approved unto God. And so they were hardworking and they expected that of us, and we didn't rebel against hard work starting, when we're in high school, having summer jobs. In fact, I worked the summers of my high school into college in the same hosiery mill where my dad worked. And I worked in an area which was all women, making minimum wage, who knew what they were doing. And here I was, at that point, a college student who knew only what my dad told me to do, but I was not very good at it. And I made the same wage they did. Again, the social injustice of that stuck with me. And I guess that's part of my, still my passion for recognizing social injustice and in some way trying to do something about it. I'm not sure where I sort of did some sidebars there. So bring me back.
We were talking about family.
Family, yes. So I'm so grateful to my family, to my parents for giving us that work ethic. And I have good relationship with my brothers and sisters who are scattered out on the East Coast, not too far away, but we don't get together often. But with social media, we have ways to communicate, and that's good. I have a godchild, a niece who's also my niece, who's 15, and we're very close to her. In fact, we just talked to her today. She got her vaccine finally. She lives in Mexico City, so this was very difficult. They waited. That was the last group to be eligible to get the shots, or was the under 18. So we're very close to her. She's coming here for Christmas for 2 weeks. We're looking forward to that. That's the children. That's one of the children in my life. Yeah, and I'm married. Tony's my husband. We've been together for 34 years. We've been married for 13 years. And we got married by chance. We were in Victoria, Canada on a vacation. And the conversation came up, and we asked our host, well, how do you get married in Canada? And he said, well, you go down the block here, it's 2 blocks away. There's an office. They do driver's license, marriage license, and I don't remember what else. Oh, it's a bank. It was also a bank. And so we went to check it out, and we got we filled out the paperwork, and then the next day or two, a justice of the peace came over to the Victorian house we were staying in the dining room, and Tony picked out some music, and we had 2 witnesses, and we got married 13 years ago in Canada when it was not legal in North Carolina, nor in all the states. And I didn't want to play that game of I'm married in this state, but not in that state. And so that was 13 years ago. And then just a few years after that is when the Supreme Court overturned all the state laws prohibiting marriage. And that's when I could apply for Tony being my spouse in the military so that he could have spousal benefits of health insurance and retirement and so forth, which was a wonderful experience to be able to live to see that change.
Right, right. So good. So if somebody was still in optometry school and looked at your career and they were inspired by you and aspired to have a career like yours, what would you tell them to give them some guidance to try, not necessarily to duplicate your career, because I don't think we can do that, but to follow some of the things that you've done or have the high profile opportunity with public health and policy?
Well, of course, finish school, get licensed, join the American Optometry Association so that your political voice can be heard in Washington, and join the become a fellow of the American Academy of Optometry, and open yourself up to the possibility of doing other things outside of optometry. Optometry, of course, is a very can be a fulfilling career, seeing patients. It's very fulfilling. But if you're interested in politics, if you're interested in health policy, explore that. And I think the master's program in public health administration opened that door for me. If I had not done that, I wouldn't have been able to get a job in health policy in Washington, whether it was AOA or whether it be a federal agency or working for a congressperson. So yeah, open yourself up to the possibility of having passions outside of optometry as well.
Right. Well, there's things to do outside of optometry that are totally unrelated to it too. You know?
Sure.
So it's all good. If you could redo something in your life, what would it be? And I'm going to limit that to maybe just 1 or 2 if you're thinking you have an entire list. But if you could redo something, what would you like to redo?
Yeah, well, you know, I look at relationships over my life. If I could redo some of those, I would have done a better job ending some relationships, I guess. I know I would have. You know, the fact that coming out as a gay person in the early 70s and the stigma of that within the health professions, you know, optometry, certainly at that time, was a very conservative profession. You know, and so would I've done things differently? What if I could redo? I don't know. It made me who I am today. The fact that I had to work within the parameters that I worked within made me a stronger person, perhaps, than I could have been otherwise. And the redo part, I don't know. I guess I'm going to have to wait till my next lifetime. I don't know. Yeah, maybe my next lifetime.
And then I would ask you, what do you wish you had done less of in your life thus far?
Oh, less worrying. Less worrying for sure. You know, I worried about a lot of things I had no control over. Having control, it goes back to my childhood, I think, where I saw my parents had no control over their lives because of their employers, who didn't treat them well. Later on, my father did have an employer who did treat him well at the end of his career, but so having control, I mean, that's another reason I wanted to go into optometry. I wanted to be in private practice, control my own destiny in terms of my work hours and patients and everything else. So, but worrying less about controlling things. There are things beyond our control in the cosmos.
Yeah.
I'm just so grateful at this point in my life. I'm learning to be grateful in a way. The pandemic, I think, brought on some of this shutdown. I'm so grateful for the simple things I have in my life now. Walking with my dog and other things that I may not have had time for earlier in my life. I may have had less time for, that now I do have time for. And yes.
Yeah, that's good. And then what do you wish you had done more of in your life?
Eat more ice cream. Let's see. Done more of. I wish, I did take some risks in my life, but they were pretty calculated. I'm not just in general a risk taker. And I see some, as I look back, there'd be more fun probably in my life if I had taken more risk. I don't know, professionally, personally, perhaps. But I was more calculated, and trying to be in control of things. And, weighing the pluses and minuses very carefully, and took fewer risks maybe than I would have otherwise. Mm-hmm. But all in all, life has been really good. I can't remember the name of the character on Saturday Night Live way back in the 80s. Who said, life, and to paraphrase him, optometry has been very, very good to me.
Yeah, yep, I remember.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I remember. I can't think of the character's name.
Yeah, so optometry has been very good to me, and I'm very grateful, and I'm grateful to all the people that helped me along the way. This wasn't me doing a lot of these things by myself. It took people, my colleagues, my optometry colleagues, and others to help achieve goals. I'm grateful.
There you go. Good. So I think we've got one question here from Jeff Walleen. He says, John, can you comment on the public health issues that you think are important for optometry to be considering at this moment?
Well, I'm going to talk a little about that in the lecture about, but one of the things I haven't thought about talking about is more than just public health, the future of public health, and also the future of optometry in relation to artificial intelligence. I'm reading a book now that's making me think a lot about this, and how, with artificial intelligence we can change minds, we can change bodies, and the technology, how the profession is going to respond to this. Are we going to let the technology control our profession? Or are we going to try to, get ahead of the technology, or welcome it and embrace it and use it constructively for, this book is also talking about logarithms that can be put together, based on people's behavior. And maybe this is already being done by optometry schools in terms of identifying students to go into the profession in the future, whether it's public health or optometry in general. How do you, what logarithms can you use to help identify them and use those to bring them into the profession? So this is for smarter people than me to work on, and I don't have any answers, but I've been thinking about this because of reading this book I have been reading lately. We've never heard public health mentioned daily in my entire life until the last 2 years. It's been an interesting time. So I hope with, with the future, I do see that there's a future for optometry and public health. And I want some smart minds to start working on that. But they probably already are, but I'm not in the loop.
Well, maybe they can just email you and kind of bring you up to date. I don't know. So that'd be good.
Okay. Okay.
So, all right. So Don Moody, being in the same age group as we kind of are, says that it was Garrett Morris as Chico Escuela on Saturday Night Live. So there
Thank you. Thank you, Don.
Much better memory on that than mine. All right. Dr. Wallin also asks, do you think that gay optometrists are free to be out in the profession today, or do you think most are still in the closet professionally? He says, certainly there are more freedoms than when you were practicing, especially in the military.
Oh, that's a good question, Jeff. So we started, actually, Jeff Kraskin in Washington, D.C., the son of Dr. Kraskin of vision therapy fame. Jeff Kraskin and I and a few people started a group back in the 80s, I guess it was, called The Gods, the Gay ODs, a little g .od. And we met annually at AOA, and we just went out to dinner. So it was some networking, like, a special interest group, like women in optometry, gays in optometry, gay people. And one year, so it was sort of like word of mouth. And so one year we decided to put an ad in the AOA News, and it was turned down. And I called up the president of AOA, who happened to be Jewish, and I said, can you believe this? I mean, you should understand prejudice and misconceptions of people, fix this. And so the ad was run. But that was the 1980s. I don't know today. I certainly hope it's not a career issue in academia or in private practice. Sure hope not. I don't have cases of people sharing with me that kind of prejudice currently, and I hope that's a good thing.
I would hope so. I would hope so.
Yeah.
Dr. Moody says, you said that Vietnam helped spark your passion for public health. He says, I'm guessing that was not the reaction most people had to their military service while in Vietnam. What was it that you saw in Vietnam that moved you to devote your professional life to public health? I'm guessing there's some social injustices based on what you said, but what was it?
Well, I am going to talk about this in the lecture, but just briefly, I got a glimpse of public health through our sexually transmittable disease clinic. And there were two physicians in the Air Force Base nearby who went to the local brothel to educate sex workers and to do blood testing and so forth. It was a public health program. There was a problem. We had sexually transmittable diseases from our troops coming in every day. And how do you solve a public health problem? Well, you go to the source of it and you educate people and you try to prevent it. And then if you can't prevent it, you treat it. So that was my first glimpse of public health. Now, I didn't go from that in my brain to saying, okay, I'm going to get out of the military and go into public health. But it was a process. And I didn't forget that. And I didn't forget the fact of growing up with, in my community with people without health insurance, and that public policy could maybe change that so that there would be mandated or universal access to healthcare. So combination of those events.
Got it. Okay, so I think we've gone through the questions that have been written in the chat. I'm going to open this up, and I think Dave Moore will kind of help us with that, to ask getting any questions live from any of our audience. So Dr. Newcomb, of course, is on here, one of your public health colleagues, and I'm confident he's got some story from 1971 or something that he likes to share with the lecturer, but I don't know if that's what he would have it like. I'll bet a nickel he's got something to say. But we'll open it up to the other folks that are on here for any live questions. So Dr. Zadnik's got her hand up first, so we'll call on her.
So John, it's my recollection that you telecommuted when you worked for AOA from Asheville.
Yes.
Do you feel like you were way ahead of the curve?
You know,
that?
there were a number of firsts in my career. Yes, that was 1997. I was the first one at AOA to do this. And my boss trusted my work ethic. And I knew he also didn't like to hire new people. He didn't have a good track record. So I took advantage of that. My parents were aging with lots of health problems here in North Carolina. They didn't ask me to come. They never put pressure on me, but I just felt as the oldest child that I had an obligation to help manage their health care hands-on. And this was a way to do it. So I telecommuted from 97 to 2011.
Wow.
14 years. I'm so lucky, so lucky. And so I would go to DC about once a month. I'd stay for a week. I would bunch all the meetings, the face-to-face meetings together in that week. And then otherwise it was the telephone before Zoom and the technology, but certainly the telephone and the internet. I was very lucky to be able to do that. Very great.
My recollection is that many, many people, including me for a long time working with you, and we worked a lot together during those years, didn't even know it.
Right.
The AOA phone number, and it would be John who answered his phone.
Yes.
And you didn't know whether he was in Washington or Asheville or Mars, and you handled it so professionally. And
Wow.
I just want that to be part of the record, because I think it would be inspirational for young people who are trying to figure out work-life balance, either with young kids or with elderly parents or sandwich generation doing both. And I just remember when I first discovered that, I said, oh, he doesn't do that. Somebody goes, oh yeah, he does. He's done it for a long time. Okay,
Yes.
well, I was the last to know.
Thank you. Well, one of the reasons I also didn't tell that to people in like National Eye Institute, staff people, I thought that they would treat me differently if they didn't know I was there. And I didn't want that to be part of the, their actions with me, their interactions with me. So I'd
label you a gold standard for how to accomplish that, actually.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Newcomb, you have any interesting stories to tell or questions?
Well, I have a lot of interesting stories, but I'll use better judgment and not share them. One thing I never asked John, and I want to ask him now. I believe you were the first optometrist to get an MPH from UNC. Is that right?
I think so. Ed Marshall came a little later.
Yeah, and I want to know, in your application, did they discriminate against you because you were just an optometrist and probably the first first optometrist in that graduate program?
Wow. Well, I don't know if it was that or they looked at my grades, but I was put on a list. I was not accepted the first time around. I was put on a wait list, and maybe it had to do with the timing of my application. Maybe it was because I was a optometrist. Maybe it was because I wasn't a good enough student previously. But my father's high school teacher's husband was part of the coaching staff at UNC Carolina. Mm-hmm. And so his name was Peacock. We went to see the Peacocks. We went to visit them. And in conversation, I mentioned the fact that I had applied and was on a waiting list. And he said, oh, I know the dean. And he said, I think you should make an appointment and talk with him. So I made the appointment with the dean, and I was accepted. So for however, you want to look at that, I'm very grateful I was accepted. I would, in the class that I wanted to be at the time of my life, I was ready for that change, that it happened. I hadn't thought about that in a long time. Thank you, Bob.
Well, I was the first OD to get an MPH at UAB. And, it was interesting being with all the pharmacists and nurses and veterinarians, and they kind of look at me like, why would an optometrist want to go get a public health degree?
Yeah. But that was the richness of the public health program, that master's program, right? Being with all these other health professionals.
Yes, it was.
And health educators. And it was a range of ages too. We had people right out of college, and we had people who had been in the field for 10 years. It was a rich, rich experience. I'm so grateful that that happened.
Well, congratulations on being the Myers speaker this year.
Thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate all you've done through the years and our friendship.
So it sounds like your optometry record in terms of grades would be similar to mine. That is, we're grateful that there's that special name for the person last in the class. They're still called doctor, right?
And I remember one of my professors saying, nobody in your office asked to see a copy of your grades. They look to see if you're licensed.
Right.
Yeah.
And your diploma that you completed your training.
Yes. And we are grateful for that, John. We are very grateful.
Very. I am.
Don Moody, do you have some questions?
Yeah, John, great to see you and congratulations.
Thank you.
What's wonderful about this last hour is it sounds like you're not really afraid to talk about anything. And I'm just, as a kid growing up in the 60s, fascinated by the Vietnam era, and just the challenges you must have faced being a closeted gay man in the military in the 60s, the ordinary stress of being in Vietnam, and you had that to deal with. I was just curious, did you ever feel afraid of your fellow soldiers at that time? How did the people around you treat you?
Right. So it was a small unit. Our dispensary was 2 physicians, a dentist, myself, an administrative officer, and 17 corpsmen. So we're a very small unit, and we all had our tents next to each other. And then our clinic was next door to our tents. Our Quonset huts were the clinic. And so I compartmentalized my life is how I survived that. The fact that, and I was still working out, trying my best to not be gay too, trying to be straight. I dated a Vietnamese girl who worked in the PX there for a while. When I really tried to be straight. And so the homosexual part was something I compartmentalized as a part of my brain and my life that I would not act on. It was there, but I separated it out from my professional job, my soldiering, the rest of my life, and my family too, separated it from my interaction with my family. So it was a compartmentalized way to get through that.
No, well, it's a fascinating story you have, and I really appreciate you sharing it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Carl
Carla?
Whitener?
John, thanks for all your great inspirational messages. And to be honest, I really do miss you very much.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody knows you live in Asheville. Tell me a little bit about why you chose Asheville and what's the benefits of living there, because I'm jealous.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Hickory, which is an hour's drive. I could not live in Hickory. I mean, I couldn't wait to get out of there to go to college. So I just couldn't live there. But Asheville had always been attractive to me growing up, and was a liberal oasis. We have about 3 of those in the whole state of North Carolina: Asheville, Chapel Hill, and maybe Greensboro. So it was an area that attracted me, and I could be close enough to my parents to get to them within an hour. It was a good choice. And I'm so lucky, as I mentioned, that my boss let me telecommute from here. And it's been a good decision.
It is a wonderful city. Thank you so much, John.
Oh, you're welcome.
Dr. Zadnik makes a note that our Associate Dean, Dr. Wallene, is not going to be able to telecommute from Asheville. So she's just.
No matter
Hi,
no
Bob.
matter how much you would want to, and no matter how admiring I just sounded of John's ability to do so, I realized I may have created a monster there for a minute.
Oh, we'll talk about this later, Jeff. Everything's possible. That's my creed. Volunteer over the years, working with volunteers. And they would say, can we do this, within AOA structure or within whatever structure? Can we do that? I said, everything is possible. Everything is possible.
So Dr.
Maybe
Moody
that's the
wants-
note we can close on. I realize we're getting into happy hour time.
Well, we're close. Dr. Moody has a very important question, though. He needs to know if you're a Blue Devil or a Tar Heel fan.
Well, not a Blue Devil, although my great nephew, just accepted a full scholarship playing football at Duke recently. No, I'm Tar Heel fan. Basketball, I don't follow football that much. I like soccer, but
We were kind of liking you right up to that point, John, because here at Ohio State, football is king, of course, but no, I'm teasing you completely. But we
Well, there was
understand growing up in North Carolina, basketball is the
thing. Yeah.
thing.
There was a very enjoyable OSU victory over Duke just recently. So
Wonderful.
happy to put some pain on them for you.
Yes. Go. Go.
All right, I'm looking to see if we have any other questions here real quick. Dr. Whitener, give me just a moment. I see nothing else in the chat and I don't see anybody coming up live. So I think we've exhausted the questions, which is wonderful news. And we're still just ahead of happy hour. So that's just perfect. I think it's going to work out just fine. So again, congratulations on being the 13th lecturer. And we're just grateful for your service over the years, for what you've done in terms of public health for the profession, and bringing optometry into the the awareness, if you will, of so many other professions, and doing so much as you've done. So thank you for all that. We look greatly forward to the lecture next week.
Yes.
Hearing what you have to say. So
All right. Thank you so much. It's been great. It's been great fun.